Titans fans, we got a loaded show for you here on Titans Today. I'm your host, Jay Sanders, and we got two big topics to talk about. The first one being, could the Tennessee Titans trade for Russell Wilson after he was benched by the Broncos and effectively ending his career in Denver? Could it be a trade target this offseason, or will it be Will Levis? And speaking of Levis, we have an injury update after he missed this past week's game versus the Seattle Seahawks. It's looking pretty bright for the young rookie to get back on the field this Sunday against the Houston Texans. Let's get this show started first with Russell Wilson and how exactly this all came about. So we got this tweet from Adam Schefter basically telling us that Russell Wilson has been benched. Jarrett Stidham is now the starting quarterback in Denver, and therefore Denver is done with Russell Wilson. And it's not really hard to see that from afar. He has one more year left on his deal, and he has $39 million guaranteed in that contract. But there is a stipulation and the reason they are benching him. $37 million can be added to that contract if he cannot pass a physical in this offseason. So the Broncos said, we're not going to risk that. We're going to bench you this season. We're going to trade you somewhere else, and we're not going to pay that $37 million because you're fine right now. We're not going to risk you going and tearing an ACL. Go out there and get hurt, have an MCL tear, have something long-term that would ultimately cost us $37 million for a quarterback that could not play next year and a quarterback that they are very clearly ready to move on with. I think this was a bad mix from the beginning if you want to go into how the Broncos have gone about this, because once Sean Payton came about, it was very clear Sean Payton and Russell Wilson did not mix. Now, the reason we're talking about this on Titans Today, well, Tennessee was named a team to watch by an NFL insider, basically saying that they're a top team that could be interested in Russell Wilson because he is, quote-unquote, a upper-tier quarterback. And although I don't necessarily agree with that, we do have reports, and I think it's interesting to talk about that. So the NFL insider being Colin Cowherd, as he said this on his show, The Herd, today, saying, now the question becomes, where does Russell go? Because it's clear that Denver is going to move off Russ. My take is keep your eye on Tennessee and Washington. There you go. From the horse's mouth. A guy who knows the Titans pretty well, by the way, Colin Cowherd, says that Tennessee could be in the mix for Russell Wilson. But do you like that? I want you to let me know in the comment section of today's video. Would you like to see Russell Wilson in a Titans uniform next season? I want you to type T for trade for Wilson, P for pass, because this is pretty obviously a trade or pass situation. What exactly would you do if you were Ran Carthon, the Titans GM? Let me know in the comment section of today's video. Would you trade for Russell Wilson? We'll make this the pinned comment, and I'll give you some time to answer that. Now, here's the thing that I want to look at with Russell is his progression or maybe digression from over the past 3 seasons. Now, back with Seattle, he was really a top-tier quarterback. I will kind of go to a lot of links to say his time in Seattle was very good. He played well, and overall, the one knack was his Super Bowl, honestly, the Super Bowl defining play on that interception, although that may have been more on Pete Carroll for not running the ball with Marshawn Lynch. But let's move on to more of the more recent years with him in the Broncos, getting 3,500 yards last year and 16 touchdowns. But 26 touchdowns this year, it's not bad. But at the same time, you look at this, and you can clearly see he is not going to be this guy that is going to lead you to the playoffs. He couldn't do that with Denver when you have an offense of Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, a running back of coming out of North Carolina. I mean, you got some rookie guys, obviously injuries in there. I mean, there's just so much that he had in his hands, to be quite honest with you, at Denver, and it couldn't work out, which is why I say this. I don't like this at all. I don't think Russell should be anywhere in the conversation with Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel. And it's clear to see that Russell is maybe in the mix for a couple teams, but I don't think Tennessee should be in there. And Cowherd's explanation on this, which I thought was kind of an interesting take, he said that the reason he thinks teams like Washington and Tennessee may be interested rather than maybe Atlanta and Minnesota is because Mike Vrabel is a defensive-minded coach. And Washington, although Ron Rivera probably will get fired, is a defensive-minded coach. They're not going to really think too much about having Russell Wilson, whereas offensive-minded people are going to talk, and they're not going to take Russell Wilson. Now, I kind of like that because offensive people talk, and let's just say Minnesota and Atlanta, Kevin Stefanski is not going to go out there and say, you know what, I think we should get a Russell Wilson. I mean, he barely can see over the offensive line at times. He's not the tallest guy. I don't like that at all. And I think it's the time you put stock into Will Levis. You have to trust him and have to look at a full season of Will Levis. I understand that there are some people who don't fully buy into the whole Will Levis thing yet, and I understand that. I mean, the kid has only played a couple games. He's still young. He's made some mistakes. But I want to look back to that Dolphins game and just see the fire in that kid and just seeing exactly what he did in those final 5 minutes of the game. That's the quarterback I want on the field. And I want to give Will Levis a shot with a better offensive line, with some more offensive weapons. And you can do that next year when you have the better offensive line pieces, when you hopefully have some more offensive weapons, because you're going to have around $100 million in cap space that you can go use to sign people, to trade for people, to go out and use your draft stock and get everything you can to make this a playoff caliber team next year, which I don't think they're too far off, even though they are not playing to that extent this year. Now, I want you to do me a favor. Go check out Prize Picks at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS, because you're doing me a favor. You're doing yourself a favor, too. You're going to get a $100 deposit match if you go click that link that we're going to put in the comments and in the description. And I'm telling you, Prize Picks, if you don't know what it is, here is your learning ability, because it's a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game, and it is so easy to play and honestly adds so much excitement to the sports viewing experience. I don't know why I waited so long to start on Prize Picks. Now, it's the largest daily fantasy platform in North America, and it's the easiest and exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers instead of batting thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. Here are my entries for Saturday Night Football, NFL taking over Saturday. We got the Lions, we got the Cowboys, and I've got the more on all three of Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, with pass yards for Goff and Prescott and receiving yards for Amon-Ra. I'm expecting an offensive game in AT&T Stadium, so I'm going the more on all three of these guys. Last time there was a primetime game in AT&T Stadium, yeah, you guessed it, that was the Seattle and Dallas game. That was an offensive game. I expect that again from these two teams who are offensive-minded guys as well. Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season has been the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And if you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, or it makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Once again, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use that code CLNS for a first deposit match for up to $100. Speaking of Will Levis, it's looking like he may be able to play this Sunday after missing this past week against the Seattle Seahawks, as Jim Wyatt reported that Mike Vrabel expects Will Levis to be on the practice field today, which he was. Still seems to be a limited capacity, kind of expected with that high ankle sprain. He'll probably be back to full maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. We'll have to see exactly. He looked pretty full today, but you can't really always tell from the few video clips you see on X or Twitter or Instagram. It's hard to exactly tell. But it seems as though right now we're going to see him on Sunday, which is a good thing. And I think there has been a lot of gripe about, well, do you play Will Levis? I mean, are you going to risk him getting injured again for 2 games that don't matter? In fact, you probably want to lose the 2 games to improve your draft stock. And while I do agree with this, I do want to see Will Levis. I want to see Will on the field, because the stats that he has put up in his really short career thus far have been pretty impressive. I mean, looking over this season, for a rookie, having just under 60% on the completion percentage and almost 2,000 yards in just 8 games, and the touchdown to interception ratio being 2-to-1 is really nice. I like what I've seen from Will, and I would like to see more of it. And it's not that I think that Will Levis is going to get injured, but I also just like to enjoy when I watch the Titans. And I think I enjoy the game more when I watch Will Levis play. I don't think I enjoy when I see Ryan Tannehill out there. I don't think that's really as much fun as seeing Will Levis out there. Now, I know that there's still some people who don't want to see him play, so I'm going to ask this question to Titan Nation, and let's see what your response is. Would you play Will Levis this Sunday and risk the injury, or are you going to let him sit and not risk it and say, hey, bud, we really like you. We want you to get ready for next year. I want you to type Y for yes if you would play him. Type N for no if you would not play him. Let me know in today's comment section. I think he made the decision himself, because let's just say he had some powerful words in his press conference today. He was on the podium for a good long time, decided to stay there and answer any question because, well, he was pretty frustrated with not being on the field this past Sunday. He showed it, and he said this about playing this week. These last 2 weeks are important, and we want to finish strong. Said it's not as much about playing spoiler as it is about winning. I like that, and I think it's overall showing the confidence this guy has, and ultimately these two games could be a confidence booster. If you go out there and you get Will Levis to basically play his heart out, it's going to be a good thing for the kid. Now, as much as I don't want to see him get injured, you can't take a guy who is very clearly so ingrained already that he wants to be out in the field. He wants to play. He wants to go prove himself. You can't take that out there. Now, I do think there has to be a conversation of we're going to play you these 2 weeks between him and Mike Vrabel and say, but we need you to start sliding because he does not slide, and I would hate for him to get injured in these last 2 games and ones that don't matter, and in fact, you'd probably rather lose in some ways to help your draft stock. Now, Teron Davenport also had something interesting that I thought we should bring up, and that is that DeAndre Hopkins has been a huge influence to Will Levis this season, and, well, Levis said that he's glad Hopkins has taken a particular interest on him. Levis is a high-energy person and said he has to know that there's a different way to approach a more laid-back teammate like Hopkins. I like that because it's kind of showing the differences of DeAndre Hopkins and Will Levis. Will Levis is an in-your-face guy. I'm going to get up in there. I'm happy. I'm excited. And D-Hop is more of I'm a laid back. I'm a vet. I know what I'm doing here. I got to get my stuff done. We're going to get your stuff done. We're going to help each other out. And I think that maybe is the reason you play Will Levis over everything. Yes, there's injury. Yes, there's lots of things. But it allows for so much growth with Will Levis and his gameplay and the way he kind of carries himself on the field, just that confidence level. Because D-Hop has been such a huge mentor in a way, even though he's been a wide receiver. It's just kind of that safety blanket. And they've had times where they've been like brothers and had disputes. I mean, there was times back when Will Levis was on the field that him and D-Hop were kind of yelling back and forth at each other. They had arguments. They had times where it's been struggling. But that's a quarterback and wide receiver relationship that is growing. And they both have so much respect for each other. And I think that, honestly, Will Levis is the reason for D-Hop's successful season. His stats this year are pretty impressive. 61 receptions for 939 yards. The average is pretty good with that. 6 touchdowns is a little less than I think I would have liked for when you have such a star receiver. And not to hate on Treylon Burks or Nick Westbrook-Akine, but when you don't have really anybody else, I would think those touchdowns would be more closer to the 8, 9, 10 range instead of 6. But I'm going to blame that on Ryan Tannehill. He's only 61 yards away from 1,000 on the season. I mean, people kind of forget about this. This would be the 7th time, or just the 7th time. I say that because DeAndre Hopkins just created this atmosphere that he's the best receiver. Just the 7th time. 7th time is insane. But it would be the 7th time in his career they would get 1,000 yards, and it would be with Will Levis. It would be the first time in over 3 years that he would get that. And I think it's mainly attributed to Will Levis because his games that he's played well have been more with Will Levis than it has been with Ryan Tannehill. Now, has he had some bad games with Levis? Yeah, of course. I mean, that's just the way a receiver goes. But 61 yards from 1,000, I want to see that being done with Will Levis. I think if you get those 61 yards with Levis, it's just like almost a deep breath with him and Hopkins. I'd like to see that. We don't know yet if we're going to get it, but we'll find out throughout the next coming days. And, well, we'll keep you updated on it. So make sure you're subscribed here to Titans Today, as we'll let you know all the latest on rumors around potential trades, offseason draft targets, draft options. If you missed yesterday's video about the potential of who the Titans might draft, make sure you go check that out. But hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss any news, rumors, anything that's going on with the Tennessee Titans. We'll have you covered. YouTube.com/Titans Today. If you're on computer or laptop, you can go scroll down. There's a little button that says subscribe. Click that. We really appreciate it. If you're on phone, same thing. There's a little subscribe button. Hit that. I'd really appreciate it. But for now, Titans fans, that's all I got for you. Tighten up.